Am I visible, ma'am?
Yes. No, you're not visible.
Nimisha,
Yes,
you're not
ma'am.
visible.
I am or I'm not?
No, Nimisha, yes, now you are visible.
Yes.
Anushka
Both
and
of you are
Nimisha,
visible.
if you are here, please go ahead.
गुड मॉर्निंग, सुप्रभात, नमस्कार। यहाँ उपस्थित सभी लोगों का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत और अभिनंदन करती हूँ। My heartfelt greetings to one and all present here. Continuing with the day 5 workshops, I welcome you all on the day 2. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. By quoting George Bernard Shaw, I, Nimisha Saxena, along with my co-host Anushka Tyagi, wish to offer a very warm welcome to all those present in this workshop on the role of listening in effective communication on behalf of the Amity School of Languages.
Good morgen, Ohio gozaimasu, Guten Morgen. I, Anushka Tyagi, considered it to be a great honor to welcome you all on the second day of this workshop. As it is rightly said by Jim Brown, effective communication is 20% what you know and 80% how you feel about what you know. I would like to stress the role of listening in effective communication on the second day of this workshop. Verbal communication should be a two-way street, with one person talking while the other listening. But we often concentrate more on speaking and not enough on listening. Listening is a sign of respect. To say that the person feels listened means a lot more than just being heard. It makes people feel valued. Before moving on, I would like to add some lines. यूं जमीन पर बैठकर क्यों आसमान देखता है पंखों को खोल जमाना सिर्फ उड़ान देखता है Starting off with this event, I would like to call my friend Ayush Pratap Singh, who is a good human at heart and always there to help us, to give us brief about this event.
जब टूटने लगे हौसले तो यह याद रखना जब टूटने लगे हौसले तो यह याद रखना बिना मेहनत के हासिल तक तो ताज नहीं होते ढूंढ लेना अंधेरे में ही मंजिल अपनी ढूंढ लेना अंधेरे में ही मंजिल अपनी क्योंकि जुगनू कभी रोशनी के मोहताज नहीं होते With these beautiful lines, I, Ayush Pratap Singh, a student of English Honours 3rd semester, welcomes you all to this national workshop on communication skills and survival. This event is organized by the club ASL Coffee House of Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Lucknow. Before we get started, I would like to thank all of you who generously helped us in making this workshop possible. And now, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our special guest, Professor Nandini Sahu. She is a poet and a creative writer of international repute. She has been widely published in India, USA, UK, and Pakistan. We are honored to have you here, ma'am. As we know that the 5-day event will revolve around LSRW, the 4 basic skills of communications: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So today's workshop is based on the use of listening communication. Listening is a skill that not only helps and serves others, it conditions us to become more compassionate and patient and nurturing people. It takes us out of our tendency towards self-absorption and self-interest, connecting us with the world around us. When we listen, we develop a new point of view, perspective, and insight at the same time, fosters the connection that confirms the trust and respect. Listening makes us human. It opens up mentally, emotionally to others' people and makes us sympathetic and empathetic to their concern and worries. Knowing how to be an engaged listener is a pivotal skill of effective communication. This workshop is designed to help us all to enhance our LSRW skills, which will in turn help us in establishing good communication and mastering the language. In this workshop, students will be trained by professionals on how to improve their communication skills through presentation and interesting activities. Good communication skills play a vital role in an individual career. Hence, the objective of this workshop is to enable students to communicate clearly and with impact. This workshop will help you to enhance your understanding about verbal communication with others. We are aiming to help the students in learning how to interact more constructively and productively. This entire event will certainly help the student to improve their communication skills in day-to-day lives. I assure you that the next few hours will be enjoyable and fruitful for all of us. So without taking much of your time, I would like to ask the host to continue the event further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayush. You gave a very nice start to the event. Before continuing, I would like to add some lines. क्यों डरें कि जिंदगी में क्या होगा? हर वक्त क्यों सोचें कि बुरा ही होगा? बढ़ते रहे मंजिल की ओर हम, कुछ ना मिला तो क्या तजुर्बा तो नया होगा? Meaning hereby, why fear what will happen in life? Why think that all time bad will happen to you? Let's keep moving towards the destination. If nothing is found, will the experience be new? Everyone can relate it to the current time and how we have to accept the new normal. Further, with these beautiful lines, I want to introduce our respected HOI ma'am. With 42 years of experience in teaching, she is the founding director at Amity University Lucknow campus. I now take this opportunity to invite her, our distinguished director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, to please come and address the audience.
Good morning, everybody. Pranam. Namaskar. I am really delighted
जी सर
my team and
Ma'am, your
students.
voice is
I-
not clear.
I welcome. Just 1 minute. See, now is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am, it's better.
Okay. So what I said was that if I start praising Nandini for what she is really due, I would be finishing off all 2 hours, but I am really indebted to her because she will be in, you know, as a great teacher and as a great learner, she will be divulging with my students, enhancing their skills and all our team members. So I'm really privileged to have you, Dr. Nandini Sahu. If we could have your video and we could see your face, we would be delighted. If you can connect, it will be fine.
She's here, ma'am. She's here.
Okay, she's there. Fine. I know she's there, but if only we could see her as well. She's a very pleasing personality. Anyway, so I am so glad. So, all right, I'm glad that today's session, after a brilliant session yesterday by Dr. Kamlasan from Presidency College, Madras, I'm sure we're going to enjoy this session as well. Now, let me just make a little comment that best communicators are storytellers and poets, because it is they who draw our attention and we can listen to them, not because we have to listen, but we feel drawn towards what they are speaking. It's wonderful to see you, Nandini. And also because imagination and writing is so interlaced with adventure, tradition, rejuvenation, mystery, well-being, that even the laziest of the thinkers are drawn out to listening to them. In this period of let's hope it's post-corona second wave, we often wonder, is this now going to be a period of stability, or are we going to fall off the cliff again? But one thing is clear, that the anti-remote mindset of yesteryears is gone. We are more apt, we are more tuned, we are more in sync with online lessons, blended classrooms, workshops, and we have, apart from our physical presence, started enjoying our virtual presence. there is a set of youth today, and I was reading The Economist, and I have also come across some of my students who feel that if, times are so uncertain, what is the idea of working hard? What is the idea of, slogging it out when life is just a thread away? And one of my students very well quoted, he said, I can be like Diogenes, who slept in his wine casket in the sun. And, I was listening to him because that was the voice of certain youth of today. And the reason he gave me, which is a lot of Chinese are also using this Neri Yuan's, they call it the Neri Yuan, or they call it the Buddha youth or the Sangh culture, in which they say that they are no longer happy to see a blooming economy like their parents, but they feel that there is inequality growing, and the society has to take stock of not only earning in matters of currency, but have to give back to the environment and also look after themselves instead of burning themselves, which they feel the government and the corporates do when they work. So this Buddha youth believes that lying flat is the best thing to do. Well, I didn't agree with the group of students I was discussing. And I said, no, what brings us happiness is work. Whether you work with the trees, whether you work with the hills, whether you work cleaning up the rivers, but work is essential to happiness. And to succeed at your workplace, whatever it is, whether it is aesthetics, whether it is imagination, whether it is writing, whether it is, in any activity of the mind, you may not work for a living. You may not work for a currency. You may just work for your mental well-being, where you can just about support yourself without looking at the pay structures. But work is essential to health. And when you are healthy, your needs are few, but your needs are there. So some sort of an employment is there. And to be able to be in sync with the team with whom you're working, because no one can achieve alone. He has to work with the team, take his people along with him. For those, honesty has to stand out. That is what I wanted the theme of this workshop to be, that honesty limps behind, whereas falsehood flies. So once again, I reiterate, to thine own self be true, and that holds above all. But in being true, you have to have your words spoken. You have to gear the team you're working with, and for that, your skills of survival and your skills of communication are essentially very important. It's not to look at it only as a means of employment. Yes, a very big factor to your employment pay package. But if you're not looking at employment pay packages, it still means that in order to be happy and to keep others around you happy, you have to master those skills. I'm delighted to see my students, as I am always. It makes my world come true. And I'm delighted to see all the participants, my colleagues, senior and junior. And I would now request Dr. Nandini Sahu to take up the podium. We have been waiting to listen to her. And my students, you give me such a pride. You give me so much of happiness, which I cannot put in words. So all the best and welcome once again, Dr. Sahu. Thank you so much for being with us and sparing your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your enlightening words. You have always been a great support system for us. It is because of you that we are motivated during these challenging times. I would like to say 2 lines. मिले ना मिले ये तो किस्मत की बात है, हम कोशिश भी ना करें ये तो गलत बात है. With these beautiful lines, I would like Ms. Paramita to kindly share the PowerPoint presentation about the listening skills in different age groups, different cultures, and most importantly, in these pandemic times. Before calling her, I would like to introduce her, as she is a very diligent and dedicated person who gives her 100% in everything she does. With this, I would like her to go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you, Anushka. Shruti, can you share the screen? The best conversations happen not when we try to talk well, but when we try to listen well. You all are gathered today to listen to the profound speakers, take inputs from the knowledge shared. But wait, are you listening? No, don't panic. Won't be asking you any questions like your nursery teacher did. But today, I, Paramita, a student of BA English Honours Semester 3, would like to present before you all a short PowerPoint presentation on the role of listening in effective communication so that throughout the presentation you can introspect within you and assess your listening skills. Next slide, please. While I'm presenting this presentation, some of the participants might be checking their social media handles. Some might be busy feeding themselves, and some might have preoccupied their minds that, oh God, who will listen to this long presentation? My voice will be heard by all of them, as they are not deaf, but only a few of them will be actively listening to me. We have been in situations where teachers ask the whole class a question and only 2 to 3 students raise their hands. The students are indeed good listeners who understand what is being said and register the information as a part of their knowledge. Okay, but what about the rest who were listening to the teacher as a North Indian would listen to a Bangla folk song, in which you are hearing to the music without being aware what is meant by the lyrics? So, while you listen to somebody, listen to them, involving all your heart, eyes, senses, and involving all your senses, heart, eyes, mind, and ears. Next slide, please. Listening to people of different age groups. Next slide. We all might have experienced conflict with our parents when we were teens, as they try to impose things on us without knowing our perspective, without listening to our side of the story. And this ultimately makes the relation between a parent and a teen a failure. Similar is the case with the elderly people at our homes who want to be heard, but do not get people hearing to their stories, which makes them feel isolated in this world. We all might have noticed this communication gap at our homes because we are always so eager in expressing ourselves that we fail to listen to what others have to say. The next time when you sit with anyone, your elder, your younger brother or sister, listen to their side of story. Next slide. Today, we are living in the age of internet, where headphones have become the new walls, where clubhouses have become the new coffee shops, where jamming sessions, live streaming are the new campfires. We can easily understand the psychology of a person by looking at his Spotify playlist, YouTube history, and the clubhouse he is participating in. People in the pandemic, caught up in the haphazards, longing to be heard, have found the mediums such as clubhouses where they can be heard without any judgments. Cheryl Richardson rightly remarked, people start to heal the moment they feel heard. Next slide. Listening to one another in the pandemic. In the tough times of this pandemic, people are finding themselves drifting off, closing down emotionally and physically, pressing the mute button and switching their cameras off. Instead of being tough on everyone, we need to keep our egos aside and listen to the people. Listen to the workforces who are mentally traumatized by the financial burdens. Listen to the students who do not feel like writing the long assignments given to them. Listen to our homies who long for leaving the homes and breathing in the fresh air. We should emphasize listening to a greater extent after the pandemic because the problem is half solved when it is discussed. And therefore, many people are coming up with free psychological consultation. Even the government is launching mental rehabilitation campaign in this regard. Next slide. Every day, there is a lot of information that is thrown at us. And as we humans cannot listen to everything and register it in our knowledge. Like, let's take a real life example to understand this failure better. Example of an online class. Next slide. As you can see in the slide, it is correctly depicting the situation of the students at an online class, where students have become multitaskers, lying down, scrolling through social media, feeding, managing different sounds at home and class, fighting with their own thoughts, listening to everyone, managing the premature evaluation they have for the teacher as a very strict one, and then they have their own thoughts that they are meddling up with in their mind. And all the sums of our online lecture, which absolutely doesn't help us to register any information. Next slide. So the problem is that everyone wants to be heard first. People are striving hard to be heard and understood first, which makes it pretty hard for listening to occur in the communication. This habit of poor listening leads to assumptions, it leads to misunderstanding, it leads to error, it leads to ineffective decision, and even costly mistakes in a corporate world. On a personal level, this poor listening may hurt the feelings of people, lose the team spirit, resulting in deterioration of trust and weak communication. By connecting the dots, we may realize that poor listening leads to our own misfortunes. But wait, how to listen effectively then? Next slide. For listening effectively, one must keep quiet as much as possible. Don't act defensively. If you want to hear, if you hear what bothers you, do not start becoming defensive for yourself. Do not become too emotional or extremely excited when you hear something. You need to remain neutral, no matter how others think of you or how you think of others. Resist your advices until you are asked for one. Remember the time when you were not heard. Try to put yourself in the speaker's shoes, no matter what. Then you will tend to listen to the speaker attentively. Next slide, please. I hope you learned something valuable from this short presentation, which you would try to incorporate in your real life. Thank you. This was all my part, and I wish you all better listening skills and a very good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paramita, for your valuable and very interesting presentation. Before moving further, here I would like to add few lines. कई जीत बाकी है, कई हार बाकी है, अभी तो जिंदगी का सार बाकी है, यहाँ से चले हैं नई मंजिल के लिए, ये तो एक पन्ना था, अभी तो पूरी किताब बाकी है. Meaning thereby, there are many victories left, many defeats left. The essence of life is still there. Let's go from here to the new destination. It was just a page, now the whole book is left.
The world is full of diamonds and gems, and today we are having some of them here with us. On this note, I would like to introduce our honorable speaker, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu, who is the Director for Department of English and Foreign Languages, IGNOU. She is a constant source of inspiration and always encouraged us to do our best. And for this, I would like to call my good friend, Ms. Akansha Jha, who is a good orator as well as a good singer, to kindly come and address the speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to everyone present at this workshop on effective communication. On behalf of the Amity School of Languages, I find immense pleasure in introducing our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu. Professor Sahu is a major voice in contemporary Indian English literature. She has accomplished her doctorate in English literature under the guidance of late Professor Niranjan Mohanty, Professor of English Vishwa Bharati, Shanti Niketan. She is a poet and a creative writer of international repute and has been widely published in India, USA, UK, Africa, and Pakistan. She is the author and editor of 13 books. Professor Sahu has presented papers on various subjects in India and abroad. Her areas of research cover Indian literature, new literatures, folklore and culture studies, American literature, children's literature, and critical theory. She is a triple gold medalist in English literature and also the award winner of All India Poetry Contest, the Shiksha Ratna Purashkar, Poetious Award of Honor 2015, and Bodha Creative Writers Award. Presently, she is a professor of English at Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, where she has designed academic courses on folklore and culture studies, children's literature, and American literature. She is the chief and founder editor of Interdisciplinary Journal of Literature and Language and Panorama Literaria, both by annual peer-reviewed journals in English. Professor Sahu merely requires any introduction, though she is profoundly known for her work in the field of education. Ma'am, I feel honored that I was given this opportunity to speak about you and your accomplishments. We are honored to have you at this workshop. It's certain that all of us present here will be able to seek guidance from your thoughts. I would now therefore request you, ma'am, to enlighten the audience with your precious words. Thank you.
Ma'am, the mic is all yours. You may go ahead.
Yeah, am I visible and audible? Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so first of all, it's such a pleasure to see these little girls and all of you so enthusiastic this morning. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Kumkum Ray, director of school, and Dr. Babu. I can't see Dr. Babu. He was the one who introduced me here. And then Ma Khan, the little girl who has been coordinating with me, even I can't see her. She has been constantly talking to me since 2 days. All of you, so the one who introduced me now, Ififa, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you all for giving me this wonderful opportunity to interact with you on communication skills. Well, before I start anything on communication skills, one thing I would make very clear here, that no one can teach you communication. One thing that you have to by keeping your eyes and ears open, by listening to whatever conversation, whatever communication is going on around you, by listening to that carefully, and that is your behavior. What I feel is language is my behavior. The way I speak myself, my language and my body language. This is my behavior. So, no, I will discuss today's topic, communication skills. I didn't know that the topic is listening skills, so combine everything. I'm talking about presenting yourself properly, very well in your research publications. And since I have been teaching literature since last 2 decades, so my discussion will be always oriented towards literature and towards research. I am a die-hard researcher, and of course I'm a die-hard teacher. So I will talk to you from a teacher's perspective and also from a researcher's perspective, what exactly we expect in any kind of communication. And in this case, the communication when it is especially about writing and publishing a research paper. I see that last couple of days, all of you, in fact, most of your experts have been talking about communicative skills, listening skills, body language, presentation, and all that. And if you go to our IGNOU website, you go to eGyan course, you will find enough material on presentation and communication skills offered from the School of Humanities, like CFP and CTE, and so many world's large students, and in most of the academic programs, starting with English literature courses to vocational education courses to foreign language courses, the component of communication is compulsory. Like your director already said, Dr. Kumkum already said that 80% of your success depends on your communication. Even if sometimes I seen that very good at their written communication, they get excellent percentage, they score 90% like that. But when it comes to employment, every employer looks for a good communicator, a person who can present well, who can speak well, who can write flawlessly, and who has a positive disposition, a positive approach towards things. If you look at a person, listen to a person, you should feel that is all about communication. So communication is not just what you write, it's about how you present yourself. How you make yourself available to the other person. You can ask me if I have any questions for, or if I don't have such activities. But before I get into my subject today, my topic is to interpret a text through the lens of a researcher. I'm really very, very theory corrupt, so I'm sorry if in between I will be talking about critical theories and how to make your research papers theoretically substantial. I would be going that area. So my topic is to interpret a text through the lens of a researcher. Most of MA and BA students, you all would be going for higher education. Some of you would be going to do PhDs, and some of you, because most of you are English literature students, so I'm sure that you are not going to become engineers. You are going to English disciplines and English departments only. So for you, writing and publishing a research paper is very, very important. Some of you must be already publishing research papers, writing research papers. If I can talk to Dr. Kumkum Ray about that after the presentation, or maybe to Dr. Babu. So when you write a research paper, it is also a part of your communication. With academia, with your communication with your future, the discipline, English discipline, which you are in. So there are a few questions that I would like you to ask yourself. First, ask the purpose of writing. What is the reason behind writing? Why are you writing any kind of communication? Why are you writing any piece of paper? So the first question is the purpose of writing. In any communication, what is the reason behind the writing? The next question for you would be, what kind of subject matter is to be preached? What is your subject matter? Your content, subject matter, powerful and more communicable. What is your diction? What is your diction? What is the language or the choice of words? Third question, that is, what should be the choice of words? What should be the language? Like I said in the beginning itself, language is your behavior. So in any kind of communication, be it written communication, be it verbal communication, the choice of words. What words do you choose to make yourself presentable? And next is presentation, which is again so very important. How well it should be presented or communicated. How are you going to communicate? How are you going to present it? And then the most important point is reader's response or listener's response. When you are presenting something, the listener and the reader is the first person who is the taker, and the lead, he or she should be in a position to receive you. Then how do you know if the person is receiving you or not? It's through proper feedback, isn't it? Reader's how well the reader understands and engages, or how well you as a communicator understand the readers or the listeners, and how well do you engage with them, engaging with them. Like now I am talking to all of you, I'm communicating, so I have to know from the feedback that if I am engaging your minds, if I am communicating with you properly. So that is one of the most important points that you should, under consideration in any kind of condition. And while writing, there are three categories on any kind of writing, that is research writing, interpretive or writing, and creative writing. So we have all three kinds of writing for you: research writing, interpretative writing or analytical writing, and the creative writing. Some of you must be creative writers, you must be poets, you must be writing stories. So when you write a story or a poem, how do you draft it? Do you have the skeleton of the story? Do you design a few important points before you write the story or the poem? Do you conceive and you proceed as it is? How do you go about it? That is also very, very important. And then what is your argument? When you write your argument, and every argument that you give, it should be backed up with specific examples. When I'm giving some argument regarding communication, regarding poetry, then it should be backed up with some specific examples from the text corresponding to your motive behind communication. And then you have to interpret. When you are writing any kind of text, you have to interpret and understand the text through the lens of the applicable literary theory. And psychoanalytical theory, feminist literary criticism, masculinity studies.
Excuse me, ma'am.
LGBT historicism, cultural, those kind of things should come to your mind when you are interpreting any
ma'am.
kind of interpretive way. Yeah.
Sorry for the
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. I really apologize for the interruption, but your voice is cracking a bit during your presentation.
But
it is cracking a lot. You can do one thing.
I hear you very clearly. From my side, I don't.
Yes, ma'am. There's an issue. So you can do one thing. You can just switch off your camera and mic for once, and then you can switch them on. I guess it will be right then.
Gosh. Yeah. So is it audible now? Is it? I think I'm audible now.
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Okay, fine. So any kind of communication, you have to ask questions to yourself. If it is research paper or something research oriented, creative writing oriented, there are three kinds of writings, as I said: interpretative writing or analytical writing, and then the next is research oriented writing, is creative writing. So when you do any kind of creative writing, you have to also theorize it. Like you have to understand the relevance and the application of any kind of theory into your writing. The literary theories like post-colonial theory, post-modernist theory, psychoanalytical theory, reader response theory, new criticism. So many things that you have to understand before communicate. And in any kind of research, first of all, you have to make a research proposal. And in the proposal, again, three things should be under consideration for you: ethical clearance, peer review, so assistance from the organization where you are trying to work for your research. So, before I talk to you regarding the different kinds of research, let me distinguish between the different approaches towards your research. One can be intradisciplinary. What is intradisciplinary? Intradisciplinary is working within a single discipline. Intradisciplinary is working within a single discipline. And next is cross-disciplinary, which means viewing one discipline from the perspective of another. Looking at one discipline, for example, you are an English literature students. So when you are looking at your English literature texts, you should be able to look at it from the perspective of history, from psychology, or so many other allied disciplines. So cross-disciplinary is viewing one discipline from the perspective of another. And the third category is multidisciplinary. People from different disciplines should work together. People from different disciplines working together and each drawing on their disciplinary knowledge. See, I'll just give you one example. New historicism is a theory which you usually apply for the interpretation of folklore. So in such cases, what you do the parallel reading of two texts. I can read a text written by William Shakespeare from the perspective of the text of history. So how Elizabethan history, Jacobean history, and the period of Renaissance, Renaissance as a history or as a literary movement had influenced the writings of William Shakespeare, or you can say the writings of the University Wits group, and or Milton, or many writers of that period. So new historicism is a literary theory which can come under the multidisciplinary approach. And then the next is, first I told you intradisciplinary, next is cross-disciplinary, and the third one was multidisciplinary. And then next is very important is interdisciplinary. Today, a lot of research is becoming interdisciplinary. So what is interdisciplinary? Creating knowledge and methods from different disciplines using approaches. So, new historical our students are taking down the important points that I'm giving. After this session, you can ask me about those. New historicism and cultural modernism. These are the two literary theories which integrate knowledge and methods from different disciplines using aerial synthesis of the approaches. And a lot of departments today are transdisciplinary research. Now, transdisciplinary, creating a unity of frameworks beyond the disciplinary perspectives. I would repeat, creating a unity of intellectual frameworks beyond disciplinary perspectives. So these 5 things should be very clear in your mind when you are trying any kind of communication. I would be focusing only on this communication. I already told. Now you ask me, what is research? A most important process for advancing knowledge. The first point about research is advancing any kind of system. That is any traditional system, advancing that by adding a few more points to that, important points to that. So research is a process for advancing knowledge. That is one. Number 2 is research is promoting progress. So there is again some area of research and you are promoting progress through that. That is the second motive, intention behind research. To relate more effectively to your environment. If you will be in a better position to relate more effectively to your environment. That is why, researchers or students, scholars who are very research oriented, they are also very down to earth, they are close to life because they relate to your environment. So that's the third point behind any kind of research. And if you ask me the next reason any kind of research is to solve your conflict. You must have heard that all men are mortal. Okay, and then is a man. Okay? If you are very conventional, you will research oriented. You will try to find out if somebody lived till 200 years, 300 years. So probably not everyone is mortal. So, research is actually creating question in your mind. When we take PhD interviews with our students, hundreds and thousands of applications every year, and we selectively take students. I mean, the best of best students only come to do PhD under our. So, the first question that I ask is, what is your research question? What question came to your mind that prompted you to go for? So, that point. So, solve the conflicts. What is the conflict? Use a better word, tension. What is your tension? Why are you so tensed? What's your tension behind this research? So, having a tension in your mind and then getting into research to solve that conflict is also a kind of communication. Then, with all these intentions behind doing a research, like advancing knowledge, promoting progress, relating more effectively to your environment, solve the and questions and your mind with all these motives behind research as a communication, to also go for research. How research? The answer would be within a framework. A set of philosophies. There are two approaches within a framework and within a set of philosophies. The philosophies are called. What are the approaches that you do? In order to go to that area, you have to follow procedures, you have to follow methods and techniques. Procedures and techniques which have been validity and reliability. See, what I'm giving you, probably activity on the basis of these keywords, that what are the procedures, methods, and techniques for any kind of research that have been tested for their validity and reliability. And the most important point behind doing any kind of research that should be in your is it should be unbiased. There should be no caste, creed, color, or any kind of bias. Bias. Research should be inclusive. Inclusivity is the key word behind any kind of research. So research should be unbiased. Take this point. Research inclusivity and unbiased, objective. What is objective approach? Subjective approach is, when you have some kind of somebody. For example, my best friend is doing a research under supervision for her. So in such cases, what you have to do first, research on the priority. Your best friend or your children or your kith and kin, they should not come to your mind when you are doing any kind of research. It should be objective. It should have an unbiased approach. And research is to extend, correct, or verify the traditional knowledge system. Actually, there is nothing new in any kind of research. Usually we ask the students, what is the novelty behind your research? Newness, the freshness behind your research. There is nothing called a fresh or new research. Everything is existing. Everything is very much there. As a researcher, what you have to do is you have to extend, you have to correct, and you have to verify that knowledge system, and you have to add something new and substantial to that. So you have to manipulate. Manipulate is not a very positive word, but still I'm using it. Manipulation of the things, concepts, and symbols. So this is a part of your research. And research. Research is your communication towards degree, maybe to position, to get a research position, maybe to solve the unsolved and challenging problems. Joy of doing creative work. This is usually my purpose, my motive behind doing any research, to get a creative work, to do research. So the quest to find out unknown facts of new things and society by social problems. To serve the society. Here I am reminded about Godimer. As a introduced me as published and all. So when a asks me, my definite answer is I write the civilization to the society, and for that I was very inspired by the witness literature. When Nadine Godimer, she got her Nobel Prize, during her Nobel Prize acceptance speech, she used the term witness literature. Now, what is witness? In the court of law, the role of the witness is very important. Whoever is the witness can actually twist and turn the case. Similarly, in the process of social change towards a betterment, towards a better society, or for the betterment of the society, the writer, the creative writer, the poet plays the role of a witness. So witness literature is something that I always try to write, and witness literature is my way of communication, my way of communicating with the society. That is my witness literature. And also, social mobility literature. Literature has to be socially mobilizing. When I write something, I should not be writing with art for art's sake in my mind. Art is definitely for life's sake. Art has contribution to life. So that is the communication of art. Art and life are closely connected, and that is witness literature, and that is social mobility literature. And after having told you the purpose, the motive behind any kind of research, I would tell you the two methods of doing any kind of research. You must have been already acquainted with that. Your able, competent teachers must have already told you about that. But again, I would request the students to take down the two important points, because you are going to use this for your lifetime. Qualitative and quantitative methods of research. I repeat, qualitative and quantitative methods of research. Now, the basic and applied researches can be either qualitative or quantitative, or sometimes even both. For example, I'm a folklorist, so I do a lot of field study for folklore. Presently, I am designing an folklore studies. Already, if you go to our eGyan Kosh, IGNOU website, you will find the content MEG16. MEG16 is a part of our MA English literature, where we have one 8 credits course on Indian folk literature. And also we have one PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies, PGDFCS. Those two courses have been designed by me. And currently I am designing a complete 64 credits program, MA in Folklore and Culture Studies. So for that, I usually combine qualitative and quantitative data techniques together. Now, what is quantitative? Quantitative research is based on the measurement of the amount or the quantity. And there is a process which is described in terms of one or more quantities. It is non-numerical, it is descriptive, it is applied reasoning, and it uses words. And the meaning and the aim of quantitative research is to get the feeling and describe any situation through a pilot survey. The key word is pilot study. I repeat, in quantitative research, the key word is pilot study. Now, what is a pilot study? You all are studying in a technical university. You must be doing a lot of pilot studies. So suppose like one of my students is doing pilot studies in some of the MIT universities only. Importance of students coming from medium backgrounds and the students coming from the vernacular backgrounds. both. Ultimately, a student will come up with the data with the information about the difference between the two categories. What are the problems and challenges of the categories of the students will face? A pilot survey through a questionnaire. You all must be making questionnaires. So through a questionnaire, the student is also making a pilot survey of the teachers. So the teachers have to fill the forms. Every day I get so many questionnaires from students like you. Ma'am, please do this pilot study for me. This questionnaire can be filled by you so that I can do a research. So in the quantitative research or the method of quantitative research, you usually do a pilot study through a questionnaire. And then you come to the conclusion. When I'm talking about this MA in folklore and culture studies that I'm designing for language death. Language death is an important term. There were 6 lakh languages and there are only 6,000 languages. Now, what happened to the rest of the languages? Nobody bothered to languages. Nobody cared to preserve those languages, so those languages died a natural death. Now, through that pilot study, I went to 60 dying language groups, last speakers. I went to African countries, I went to Madagascar, countries and Mauritius and Nepal and also so many states in India, and I did a pilot survey with them. I spoke to the last couple of speakers of those important dying languages, and I found that the languages are dying due to the lack of communication and also preservation, documentation. So I created some CD-ROMs, created books, and tried to preserve those languages. And that pilot survey actually helped me, enriched me, motivated me to work more towards the preservation of the other and so that communication with academia. Okay. Basically taking seminars, meeting people, taking interviews with them, and presenting. That's quantitative research. Now, what is qualitative research? Qualitative research is descriptive, statistics, and sometimes mathematics. It uses numbers whereby evidence is evaluated, only evidence. Results are presented in tables and graphs and like quantitative research is not conclusive. You take questionnaires, you take answers from people, you take interviews with people, but you don't conclude anything. You present those through a pilot survey. But in qualitative research, it's text-based. You kids and you read the text, and through the text, you talk about how Wordsworth spiritualizes nature, Coleridge supernaturalizes the natural objects, Keats sensualizes nature, and Shelley is optimistic. So you do a text-based study. So it investigates about the what, where, and when. I repeat, it investigates the what, where, and when of any kind of decision making. And qualitative data cannot be graphed. Quantitative data can be graphed. Qualitative data cannot be graphed, and it is exploratory. It investigates the why making. So, your students, when you went for MPhil and PhD and your higher studies, you would do a lot of qualitative research and a lot of quantitative research. So, I interdisciplinary. I would suggest that you do the qualitative research and the quantitative research together, and you make a combined kind of survey. You make a presentation which is very combined, and you do not try to be conclusive. Try to be inclusive, because inclusivity and accepting everything is a part of your research and communication. It's a part of your witness literature. It's also a part of social mobility. And after once you have completed your research, you should ask yourself the method of presentation. How am I going to make this presentation? How am I going to present it in front of a group of people, or maybe as a part of your research? How are you going to present it? That is also equally important for you. And you have tool. Data collection is also a part of communication and research. The tool data collection, inquiry forms. You to people. You should have a schedule of your research. I always ask my students to create research cards. There should be two cards. Research cards. The ultimate plagiarism, you know what is that? Copying somebody else's writings and presenting those as if it's your own. Present it somewhere else as a part of your research, then what you have to do is you have to quote me as a writer or quote me as a speaker. If you do not do it, if you do not put that on so and so date in so and so lecture which was recorded, it was quoted from the guest speaker's lecture, then probably you become a victim of innocent plagiarism. For that you have to prepare a checklist, research cards, schedule checklist, and also you have to prepare a rating scale. You have to rate your research. First year, how much you have worked, and the rating, if it is 30%, 20%, whenever my students come to work on my vision for the research, tell them that you have years to work. I think scale and scoreboard. Now in the rating scale and scoreboard, what I ask them to do is create a roadmap. In the first year, first 6 months, only reading, no writing. They have to only read all kinds of literary theories I recommend, and they have to read their primary and the secondary texts, and then they have to collect memberships in. They have to, in the first 6 months, they have to equip themselves. They have to gather material and read. The next 6 months, submit a first chapter. One chapter in 55 to 60 pages. First chapter should be submitted to me, which should have 0. I always check plagiarism before I go through the chapter or the stuff. So the first chapter has to be submitted to me and it has to be cleared by me in the next month, first year. And in the second year, I ask them to submit 4 more chapters to me. Because the PhD thesis usually has 5 to 6 chapters. So 4 more chapters they have to submit to me in the second. And in the third year, I'll redraft, edit, and do 6 months of the third year. And after the third year, presentation, and during 3 presentations in front of my colleagues and the doctoral committee to give 3 presentations. So all the presentations, all the progress reports together, and all the rating scales and scoreboards and schedule and questionnaires and checklists and inquiry forms and research cards, everything putting together is the tool for presentation in any kind of research. Interdisciplinary research, you have to use sociometric techniques also. You have to do psychological tests also. I'll give you one example of the psychological tests. One literature is Bimari, and the student is doing PhD on a couple of literary, a few literary texts where AIDS fictional method. Some AIDS patients are there, and what all they are going through, the ups and downs in their lives, and ultimately what happens to them. The novels are somewhat like that. but the student is doing psychological test by taking questionnaires to some real-time affected people and taking interviews, psychological, the psychoanalytical tests with those people, and ultimately incorporating the psychological tests, the little tests that the student is doing, combining everything together. Thesis to me. So, you know, I believe in what for you? Intertextuality. Please Google that later on. And another word is polyphony. P-O-L-Y-P-H-O-N-Y. These are the upwards. Now, what is intertextuality? It is the shaping of one text's meaning by another text as layers and to text. I would say intertextuality is the shaping of one text that adds layers and depths to the text. And it is based on the reader's prior knowledge. If you are a reader, you must be having some prior knowledge about any kind of text. And you can be having some understanding of any kind of text. Now, when you are doing an intertextual reading of, say, novels, poetry, theater, or even non-texts like digital media, you are comparing to movies, digital media, performances, you are comparing to dance forms. So when you are comparing these things, intertextuality should work. You compare texts by shaping the meaning of both the texts by incorporating the ideas from each other. So you are taking ideas from one text and you are trying to introduce that idea to the understanding or to the interpretation of the other text. That is intertextuality. I'll give you some examples. If you're not very careful about intertextuality, then you can also become you can be mistaken for plagiarism. Examples of intertextuality kind are an author's borrowing and transforming text, the readers referencing of one text in reading another, and intertextuality. Interestingly, students, intertextuality does or citing like quotation marks. It doesn't need. When you do any research, I would always suggest you to do that double quote thing and quote. Textuality, you doesn't expect that from you. So in such cases, you have to be very careful, otherwise you will be mistaken for plagiarism. So intertextuality, its function is the elucidation, referencing, and understanding. You understand one text with the help of another. I'll give you a very small example here. In one of the Shakespearean tragedies, in Hamlet, the character, the character, he had a dream that your mother and her lover, that his uncle, they poured some poison into his ears. Kaan mein poison dal diya. They poured some poison into his ear. And then he died. Next morning, there is a dead body, but there is no evidence how he died. Now I looked at some intertextual reading. You just go to chapter on new historical beginning theory by Peter Harry. That will give you some kind of information that some texts of medical science, some allusions about how the committing a murder was poison in somebody's death. So you see, in a medical science text, there is information about putting poison in the ear and killing the person. Kaan mein poison dal diya. killing the person. And at the same time, in the Elizabethan period, there is an example of a play, Hamlet. One character is killed, murdered by another character by putting poison in his ear. So intertextuality will work. You read both the texts together. That during Jacobean period, Renaissance period, Elizabethan period, such kind of method. Yeah, polyphony has from Buxton, fusion, the fusion music. You go to folk and music, folk music, classical music, there is a strange fusion. So polyphony is about fusion music. Now that has come to literature. So the novels can be taken and approach or apply for the interpretation. Text has a single version. No text has a single. So one text has to be studied from a polyphonic fusion music method that you apply in everything, and then you find that you get a new meaning of it. So ultimately, what I would say, I will take the 5 minutes only. I would say is when you are selecting any kind of study design, any kind of idea for your research, give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm getting some water. Selecting a study design or creating any kind of research, consider a few things like the nature of the investigation, the crossover, comparative, and cross-sectional experimental design. Next is you have to use trend studies. If you have the study designs, one will be the kind of investigation. Next is crossover, comparative, and cross-sectional experimental designs. Next is trend studies, opinion poll surveys. Next will be cohort, COHORT, cohort. A class of student population. For example, you all are BA and MA students at university. Suppose I am making a questionnaire for only your 2 classes. Then it is called a cohort, COHORT. So you also do that cohort studies as a part of. And next is panel studies. Panel studies is collect information from the same universe at different points of time. For example, if I give a questionnaire to you people in your BA first year, month of January, then I give similar to January, then January month, but the questions will be a little different. The same group of students, which is again a pilot study. So this is a panel study. So what I said, study design. Next is cross-sectional design. Next is trend studies. That you trend study is opinion poll survey, isn't it? And cohort studies is a group of students or a class of students. Sometime review with them. Next is panel studies. So one group of individuals at different year, January, I have taken some point from some questions from you, and I'm using it as a part of my research for minimum 3 studies or double-blind studies. Blind studies and double-blind studies are basically for people who are the reviewers of any journal or magazine or something like that. I am the blind reviewer of quite a few international journals where I get research papers, very high-profile people who write the research papers, and those are sent to me by removing their names. I will not get to know the names of those people. Who all have written those papers? Double-blind studies. So I will read the paper once. I will give my comments, send those back to the journal. The journal will send it back to the author. The author will rewrite that on the basis of the comments I have given, and then it will again come back to me for double-blind review. So blind studies and double-blind studies again is a part of your study design. Next is holistic approach or holistic research. Now, what is a holistic research? HOLISTIC. What is a holistic research? Systems are approached to the component parts, which are the contexts and the relations to one another. So in holistic research, I approach something as a whole. What happens is, in new historicism and cultural materialism again, suppose I am reading a literary text. So I would be reading folk cuisine, folk dance, folk music, folk presentations, and holistic research. I read one text. Rather, I would read one as a culture. A book is a culture. A text is a culture. So holistic research is a part of culture. In folklore and culture studies, holistic research is the thing that we usually use. And the next is the reflective journal log. Reflective journal log, it's a right or call research diary cards. Reflexive journal. Next is action research. The goal is to determine, to enhance the lives of children. Action research. And next is feminist research. You all know that it's a part of social. And next is gender studies. Under gender studies, I take three things together: feminism, masculinity studies, and LGBTQ studies or queer studies. So under feminist research, I mean under gender studies, I have feminism, which is women's studies, masculinity studies, which is men's studies, and queer studies. Queer is LGBTQ studies. And the next is participatory and collaborative research inquiry. Participatory, like this workshop that you all are doing now, it sounds very interesting to me. It's participatory. Everyone is presenting PowerPoint. Everyone is participating. Everyone is trying to contribute something. So that is participatory research. And the final thing I usually conclude with that is witness literature. Now, in the beginning itself, I told you what is witness literature. Witness literature is part of your social mobility literature. How you mobilize a culture, how you mobilize a society through your witness literature is the part of that kind of research. And through any kind of research, if you are communicating through any kind of research, then your aim should be to motivate young authors. How do you motivate young authors? By focused, organized, scholarly writing, and the writing that is necessary in the academic world. And your purpose of writing should be clear. What is the reason behind this communication, this kind of writing? And then content. What kind of subject matter and content should be placed here? And then diction. What should be the language and the choice of words of this research? As I already told you. Presentation, how well it should be presented. And the reader's response, how do I engage the readers? And through communication, here I would mean through written communication, we should aim towards nation building, creating a positive, optimistic group of people, youngsters, to create optimistic, positive, free-thinking, empathetic youth has been my way of communication in my writings. To build a collective imagination, to achieve public results, to pursue a shared vision of the future, and also to collect capacity, to create capacity building. You should create capacity building. That is why I said that in IGNOU, in most of the literature courses or any kind of academic programs, we have communicative skills compulsory as a component. Because through communicative skills only we are building their capacity. We are strengthening their capacity. So collective capacity building should be a part of your communication. building capacity to anticipate, to innovate, to adapt, and to adapt and face of increasingly complex public issues and volatile circumstances. Public life is becoming so complex day by day, and especially during COVID, during the pandemic, so important. A lot of people are going through mental health communication. So now communication is more important than anything else. You have to speak. You have to talk to people. That too through technology-driven, supported communication. National Education Policy document, NEP document, uses the word language 201 times. They have given so much of importance to languages, preservation of languages, language is a part of communication. So all I'm trying to say today is take your language, take maximum care of your language, your written language, your verbal language, your oral communication, and also your body language. And the body language is the only way through which you can communicate with people. You can generate innovations. You can introduce young people to the traditional knowledge systems, and you can knowledge, and you can be the social change towards a positive and global society. Thank you. Any questions or anything?
Thank you, ma'am. I wish to express my gratitude to our chief guest for being with us at this event. Your presence and gentle words are a source of encouragement for all of us. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words.
Now, the audience would like to ask some questions. Please raise your hand in order to ask the questions.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Dipesh Gurnani wants to ask a question. Dipesh, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, my question to you is, can you tell me the difference between blind study and double blind study?
Ma'am, he wants to ask the difference between blind study and double blind study.
Hello, ma'am. Nandini, ma'am, are you there?
I think Dr. Sahu has left the platform. Is it?
Let me check, ma'am. Actually, she was facing some network issue. She might have got disconnected. I will try to connect with her as soon as possible.
All right, all right.
Ma'am, she's in the meeting. Give a minute. Give a minute.
I apologize for the convenience. Let us continue with the event. Ma'am will join us after some time.
I guess ma'am just joined the meeting.
Okay, ma'am, you're here.
Yeah, fine. So any questions, please ask me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, a student want to ask what is the difference between blind study and double blind study? This is the question from Dipesh Gurnani.
Okay. Yeah, again, it's a question that has so many answers, but I will stick to one. Blind studies, for example, if you write for an internationally reputed journal, you send your research paper to them for publication. If I am their expert, they will send the paper to me for a blind study, a blind review. By removing your name, designation, and everything will be removed from the paper. Only the research paper will come to me for a review, and then I will give my comments on that. In some cases, in the double blind study, what they do is they send my review and your rewritten paper to a third expert, a second expert. And in some cases, they send it back to me for a double blind. You be checked or reviewed by one or two reviewers who do not know you. I don't have to know you. I have to know your research only. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Your internet is.
Question.
Yeah. Yes, Alma. Please. Yeah. What is your question next?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wisdom. And ma'am, in today's scenario, what I have noticed is that there is a sudden rise of disinterest in literature. And as you have worked in children's in field of children's literature, do you have any solution for it? Because as we have seen, the syllabus for the primary generations and the juniors get hectic, and they are just disinterested from reading or any type of literary work. They're just disinterested from even reading. Like when we were kids, we used to read Panchamrit, used to read.
Okay, I got it. So am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are perfectly audible. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, fine. So that's true. There is no disinterest in literature. With this question may be reframed that people are not disinterested in literature. What happens is now there are too many distractions. For example, there is Netflix and OTT and so many things. Even during lockdown, the students are attending classes online and they are missing their peer groups. They are not going to their universities and schools and colleges anymore, sitting in front of the computer, listening to lectures and reading books on the screen, or sometimes reading the hard copies of the books is the only activity they are left with, and it's becoming monotonous. It's becoming a bit monotonous and boring for them, so they are dragging themselves to other platforms like social media or entertainment and all that, because those are very glamorous and attractive. So in such cases, I think a major role has to be played by the teachers and the creators. People have to, where students and the readers can have interest. They can also have, so there are some audiobooks which are two-way. There can be questions. And then in the classroom teaching also, the teachers, what they usually do, they make a PowerPoint presentation and they send it to the students. And they go on reading the PowerPoint. The students can read the PowerPoints themselves. So basically what the teachers or the speakers have to do is keep it engaging, interact with people and give a chance to everybody to come forward. Because students don't want to come forward. They are finding an easy way. Just mute yourselves, mute your audio and video and do something of your interest. They're doing it. So this is not about the people's disinterest in books, but it's about the method of communicating. Again, I'm coming back to the theme of your webinar today, communication. How books and teachers are communicating with students and how the students are communicating back with them is the point. Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Anyone else is having any questions, they may raise their hands and
I
ask.
would like to ask a question. Am I audible?
Yes, Jaya
audible.
Verma, you are audible.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, ma'am. First of
Okay.
all, it was
Hello,
very
Jaya. Tell
exhaustive
me.
talk, and I really liked it. I mean, I learnt a lot from this talk, I would say. So thank you for this talk, first of all, ma'am. And my question is related to publication, ma'am. In fact, I have two questions, but both are related. If you can answer
I
both.
hear you. Audible. Your internet is very bad.
Ma'am?
Okay, I can hear Jaya. So what you can email me the questions.
Ma'am, you can drop your question in the chat box. I'll ask ma'am.
Okay, I'm not audible. Is there any problem with audio?
Ma'am, there was some
Your voice is
connectivity issue.
breaking. You just
Yes, no
a
voice.
couple of words.
Okay, I'll write my question in the chat box.
The participants
maybe you can email
also
that to
drop in your questions in the chat box.
Yeah. Where is the chat box?
Anyone having any question, please drop the questions in the chat box.
Nimisha, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Shubhi.
Ma'am, I think
Yeah,
ma'am
tell
can
me.
hear
Yeah.
me also. Yes, ma'am. So first of all, ma'am, thank you so much. I am supposed to write a research paper, and this would be my first attempt. And your speech really helped me a lot, and I think I'll be able to write a good one. So, ma'am, my question is
Very good.
that you mentioned that a research paper should have an unbiased approach. But, ma'am, what if we are given a
Absolutely.
topic? But what if we are given a topic in which we are supposed to write either for the topic or against the topic? Then in that case, what should be done?
If for and against will not be research paper. If you are given a topic to write for or against something, it can be anything else but a research paper. A research paper has to be unbiased. As I said, it should not have any class, caste, gender, color, any kind of bias, and it should have an objective approach to it. So create a few research questions yourself. No one can give you a question or a point or a bias on which you have to write a paper. That is not a research paper.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Ma'am, there is one question from Jaya, ma'am. Sometimes research papers are rejected by publishers. What can be the reason for it?
Well, there can be many reasons. When anyone rejects your research paper, ideally they should also give you a reason. There is a format of acceptance and rejection, or even in the format, there is a third category that revised research paper can be accepted. So if you are getting revised research paper can be accepted, in such cases, the blind reviewer will have given a few points to you to consider, to reconsider. It is an acceptance, it's good. But if it is a rejection, they have to give you the reason behind the rejection. If you're not giving, they're not giving, you have every right to ask questions. So you send a mail to them or you write to them that my research paper was rejected, but on what ground, on what basis, I may please be informed. You can write it to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more questions?
Ma'am, Masarat Fatma here. Can I ask a question? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Ma'am, thank you so much for giving us the insight. Like, I'm also a fresher and just pursuing my part-time PhD. And I just wanted to know, ma'am, though you have given me so much of information about how to write a paper, how to, categorize your work, how to relate to different theories and all, I kept on noting down. You discussed about this research guard. while doing a roadmap kind of thing, ma'am, how to relate it to a qualitative research? How can I inculcate this point in my qualitative research, ma'am? Would you please elaborate on it?
So don't do a part-time PhD ever. Don't ever do a part-time PhD. Do a full-time PhD only, because in due course of time, when you are applying for jobs, your part-time PhD can put you into trouble. So even if you're not attending your university or meeting your supervisor every day, but make it a point that the certificate of your PhD should have clearly mentioned.
Ma'am, I appreciate your advice, but because I'm in a government job, so that was the option left to me. Though I'm in regular touch with the guide and the university people, and I've given all the exams in time. And
now a lot of people assistant associate professors in different universities. Somehow, and supervisor that you are getting a full-time PhD. Your part-time PhD degree will not help to the board and selection committees of many. So I know that you put you into ensure that your supervisor.
I think ma'am's voice is cracking. I'm not able to hear.
Yeah, the voice is cracking.
Can you hear? Yeah. Is it qualitative research?
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing qualitative research.
Qualitative research. Qualitative research is typically text. It's text oriented. So when you are reading a literary text, whatever is your subjective approach towards the text is a part of the qualitative research. But what is important in your qualitative research methodology and justification of your hypothesis is how you authenticate what you write. For example, like I gave you the example that all men are mortal is a man, so Ram is mortal. Suppose I, Nandini, I beg to differ. I write that Mr. ABC is not mortal, immortal. So I have to justify that he lived for 500 years and he is still living, he is still alive. So research is not about always telling the truth, but it's about justifying, proving what you said, what you wrote. So in qualitative research, for example, I have a book titled Sita. It's a complete poetry collection. You can Google me, Google Sita by Nandini Sahu. It's a complete poem as one book in 25 cantos, where I have talked about a progressive, independent, contemporary, positive-minded Sita, who is not brooding, crying, complaining her destiny over her destiny. So, doing your research on that kind of book, people have already PhDs on this text. So many people have different approaches to the texts. Some of them may, my subjective approach to Sita is rather very personal, and some of them might connect me, associate me with history, with mythology, with some folk versions of the Ramayana. So whatever you're talking about a text, even if it is subjective, you have to justify that, authenticate that by quoting the text, or maybe by taking an interview with the author. So most of the times when I do any research, I try to take an interview, a black and white interview with the author. So that is how you can justify your qualitative research.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Her studies and towards the end of my research. Okay, you know, if anyone wants to have a further discussion with me on this, please send an email to me, kavinandini@gmail.com. But please don't write unnecessary things. Write only important points regarding research, because I am always ready to help young enthusiastic researchers. The kind of pilot studies and the talk towards the end of my lecture. If you want detailation on that, mail that to me. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ilma Khan wants to ask a question.
Pardon, ma'am, but this is another question. It's reading, ma'am. Yeah. Am I audible, ma'am?
Ilma, I can hear. No, your voice is breaking, Ilma.
Hello. Is my voice audible, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's audible. Please tell me.
Ma'am, when we are reading authors like Virginia Woolf, who are mostly who are a stream of, who are writing generally about using stream of consciousness techniques, these are not easy. These are not everybody's cup of tea. And as you talked about parallel reading, so right now I'm writing a research paper on Virginia Woolf, and it would be great help if you could suggest me some easy ways to understand and read it much more meticulously, so that it can help me with my research paper.
Okay, I don't know exactly what is your hypothesis in that research. Only when I maybe give you some practical, some particular literary or what I would say initially is if you have not started reading literature, go to books, very simple ones, which I ask my BA students to read or even MS students to read. From Dr. Nayar's book Literary Theory and also Beginning Theory by Peter Barry. Read those two books and read New Historicism. New, N-E-W, New Historicism. I will that, okay, read New Historicism, and then you read Virginia Woolf along with some of the texts of history of her period. I'm not talking about history of English literature books, history books of that period, and some of the anthropology books of that period, if available. Like I read Shakespeare with medical books, imagine. I read folklore books with the folk cuisine, folk medicine, folk dance, and folk performative art forms and theater books. So in due course of time, you will learn to do parallel reading of different allied disciplines together. But initially, you start with reading anthropology and history books of that period of Virginia Woolf, and then you get back to me with your hypothesis. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, Elma. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Anushka, so can we call it again?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Today was a great
day, and I want to thank everyone who gave their vital time from their busy schedule. Now, I would like to call my friend Ms. Shubhi Gupta, who is an excellent speaker and a wonderful person, to kindly come and give the vote of thanks.
I think I'm audible and visible.
So, Anushka,
Yes,
can I
yes.
log out because your voice
Yes,
is breaking?
ma'am.
I can't hear you. Yeah, okay. And
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your patient hearing. Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anushka, should I begin?
Yes, you should continue.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anushka. A warm and graceful afternoon to our most valued, distinguished director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu, our management committee, worthy professors, my dear friends, and everyone gathered here. It's an honor to have been asked to offer a vote of thanks. I bow my head in veneration to the Almighty for showering His benedictions on all of us. I must remark a proficient sense of gratefulness to our distinguished director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, for taking the initiative of being the convener of this great 5-day event. On behalf of MIT School of Languages and the entire management group here, I express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu for sharing her knowledge in abundance with us. And ma'am, I hope this message would be conveyed to you. We look forward to work with you in future as well. I want to extend my generous thanks to our faculty coordinators, Dr. ABR Prasad and Dr. Archana Gupta, for their wholehearted support to all the students. I'm thankful to all the delegates from different parts of the country for marking their presence today. I would also like to thank our student coordinators, Ms. Ilma Khan and Ms. Afifa Sharif, for being such a great support in this event. I want to thank Ms. Ilma Khan, Ms. Afifa Sharif, and Ms. Richa Rajput who played a crucial role as technical members on day 2 of the workshop as well. I want to thank the performers of day 2 of the workshop, who are Mr. Ayush Pratap Singh, Ms. Paramita Tekchandani, and Ms. Akansha Jha. I also want to thank the wonderful anchors of day 2, who are Ms. Namisha Saxena and Ms. Anushka Tyagi. I would like to thank all the members of the ASL department and the faculty members of other institutes too for gracing this event. I'm very thankful to all the supporting staff for making this workshop a great success. I'm very thankful to everyone who contributed in making this workshop a grand success. With this, we come to the end of the meeting. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Nowadays, the situation in our country is nerve-wracking, so please stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy. Have a nice and a skillful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your precious time and attention. I would like to call off this day by saying, a good event never ends. It takes only a pause and keep us awaiting for the next. With this, day 2 comes to an end, and I hope to see you all on day 3. We'll start our day 3 tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thank you for joining us.
At last, I would request everyone to kindly switch on their cameras for a virtual group photograph. Everyone, please switch on your cameras, the teachers, the guests, participants, everyone, please. Shubhi, can you please take the screenshots?
Yeah, I've already taken 2. If you all can smile, a big smile, then I can take another one. Yes, done. Thank you so much for smiling, everyone.
Yes, thank you everyone. We'll meet tomorrow then. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.